Thank you. That concludes topical questions. And before we move to the First Minister's statement, I invite members to join me in welcoming to the gallery the Honourable Pat Weir MP, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, Parliament of Queensland. Thank you. The next item of business is a statement by John Swinney on Programme for Government 2025 to 2026. The First Minister will take questions at the end of his statement, and so there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on the First Minister.
Presiding Officer, tomorrow will mark 1 year since I was honoured to be elected as the First Minister of this country that I love. I spoke then of my ambition to create a vibrant economy in every part of our country, my determination to tackle the challenges faced by our beloved National Health Service, and my hope that we can come together as a Parliament and as a country to focus on solutions rather than allowing our disagreements to dominate. Over the past year, amidst real challenges, amidst deep uncertainty on the global stage, progress has been made. In ways big and small, a corner is being turned. This is a government that is working hard and determined to get Scotland on track for success. That progress has been evident in the way we do our business here in our Parliament. The fact that 4 parties were able to come together to negotiate in good faith and pass a budget that delivers record funding for our National Health Service is testament to what is possible. Today's programme for government is presented in that same spirit. It contains many of the fruits of our budget process, with elements within it that are there only because of the cooperation of other parties. But this is also a programme by an SNP government, a government that cares deeply about Scotland, a government that has total confidence in Scotland's ability to rise to any challenge and to weather any storm. Presiding Officer, before I turn to those elements that are in the programme for government, I want to talk about some measures that are not included. With a year to go until the end of this Parliament, there are clearly limits on the amount of legislation we can present. This government, and I personally, remain entirely committed to tackling misogynistic abuse against women. Regrettably, I do not believe there is sufficient parliamentary time to make progress through a standalone bill, which I would plan to bring forward at the start of the next Parliament. We will, however, take the action we can in this Parliament by adding sex as a protected characteristic to existing hate crimes legislation to protect women and girls, and by taking further steps in our policy to tackle unacceptable abuse of women and girls in our society. Conversion practices that seek to change or suppress a person's sexual orientation or gender identity are harmful and abusive. Over this coming year, we will seek to work with the United Kingdom Government to deliver a legislative ban across England, Wales and Scotland. But if agreement is not possible, we will publish legislation in the first year of the next parliamentary term. Members of the LGBTQI+ community should have no doubt that we will work with them to protect and to defend their rights. Times are tough, Presiding Officer, and times are changing in ways that I know bring real anxiety to our citizens, real fear to many in our business community. But my promise to the people of Scotland is that amidst the uncertainty, there is one thing they can be sure of. This is a government that will always seek to do what is best for Scotland. As First Minister, I will always put the needs and interests, the hopes and dreams of the people of Scotland first. When I became First Minister a year ago, I heard loud and clear people's concerns about the health of Scotland's NHS. They would tell me about their many positive experiences of high-quality care from the dedicated staff in the NHS, experiences of treatment and care that are invariably world-class. But they also spoke of difficulties accessing that care, waiting times that were unacceptable, adding to anxiety, systems that they felt did not put patients first. Presiding Officer, there are many issues that compete on a daily basis for the attention of a First Minister, but what could be more important than our National Health Service? So I'm proud that the £30 million that we committed has not just delivered the 64,000 additional NHS appointments and procedures between April of last year and the end of January this year that we promised, but over 40,000 more than planned. An extra 105,000 vital additional appointments and procedures that are helping to reduce waiting lists and waiting times. We have met the children and adolescent mental health waiting time standards, with over 90% now seen within 18 weeks of their referral. More cancer patients are now treated faster. Compared with a decade ago, 16% more patients receive care within the 31-day standard and 11% more within the 62-day standard. Statistics, yes, but behind each one a person who has received the sort of reliable and effective care from the National Health Service that they deserve. Progress, yes, but with a very clear understanding that there is more, much more to do. And that is why a renewed and stronger NHS is at the very heart of this programme for government. Getting our NHS on track is about reform that is fundamentally patient-centred, it is about investment, and it's about increasing productivity and capacity. This approach makes it possible for us to deliver more than 150,000 extra appointments and procedures in 2025-26. The additional investment secured through the Scottish Budget will enable us to expand specialist regional centres. Technology will mean more efficient use of operating theatres. The result? A 50% increase in the number of surgical procedures we can deliver compared with this year. There will be a renewed focus on cancer diagnosis and treatment, targeted investment so that health boards can clear backlogs and substantially improve waiting times. Presiding Officer, I could spend the whole statement just talking about the steps we are taking to access the National Health Service. But before moving on to other issues, I will highlight one other area that I know is of particular concern to many people. While many people's experience of their GP service is excellent, for many others there is deep frustration over the difficulty making appointments and what has been described as the ATM lottery. This is of central importance to me. That is why we are acting to reduce pressure and increase capacity in the system so that it is easier for people to get the care that they need when they need it. That includes, in the year ahead, a further expansion of Pharmacy First services, with pharmacies being the right first port of call for many ailments. But it also means the delivery of an extra 100,000 appointments in GP surgeries focused on key risk factors such as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity and smoking. This year, primary care, including GPs, is receiving a bigger share of new NHS funding, and we are committed to not only increasing GP numbers but protecting Scotland's advantage, which means substantially more GPs per head in Scotland compared to elsewhere in the United Kingdom.
Thank you.
Presiding Officer, members across the chamber will know that alongside the NHS, our constituents are also deeply exercised about the ongoing cost of living crisis. We have experienced a decade and more of financial insecurity, higher prices and squeezed real incomes. Life feels substantially tougher for many of those that we serve. The economy means jobs, growth and investment, and I will talk about all of these elements. But above all, the economy is about people's quality of life. It is about their own household budget, their ability to pay the bills. The Scottish Government will always do what it can to deliver the best deal for the people of Scotland. In concrete terms, that means a commitment to keep council tax bills, already 30% lower on average in Scotland than in England, substantially lower than elsewhere in the UK. Water bills, already 20% lower than in England, will remain lower, as will income tax for the majority of workers in Scotland. Prescriptions will continue to be free here in Scotland. Eye appointments free. Bus travel for young, disabled and older people in Scotland free. Scotland will continue to pay no tuition fees. Parents will continue to benefit from a package of early learning and childcare worth more than £6,000 for every eligible child. Free school meals, which save the average family £400 per child per year, will be expanded, and more breakfast clubs introduced. Together, this is my cost of living guarantee, a package that year on year delivers savings for the people of Scotland, a package that exists nowhere else in the United Kingdom.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, Presiding Officer, it is a package of cost of living support that we are always looking to enhance where we can. That is why we took the decision in the budget to restore a winter fuel payment for Scottish pensioners, with the poorest receiving the most. Those payments will be made this year, and it is why we are committed to doing even more. Last year, in the face of severe budget pressures, we took the difficult decision to end the peak fares pilot on our railways. But now, given the work that we have done to get Scotland's finances in a stronger position, and hearing also the calls from commuters, from climate activists and from the business community, I can confirm that from the 1st of September this year, peak rail fares in Scotland will be scrapped for good.
Thank you.
A decision that will put more money in people's pockets and mean less CO2 is pumped into our skies. Once again, tens of thousands of Scots saving money. Once again, a better deal for people because they live in Scotland. Better for Scots because there's a government that always strives for what is best for Scotland. Alongside the cost of living pressures, the consequence of a series of body blows from austerity and Brexit to the spike in inflation and energy costs that followed Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, new threats are emerging that have the potential to cause extensive damage to the Scottish economy. Tariffs will impact directly on many Scottish exporters to the United States, while a US recession and a global trade war will have direct effects and indirect effects on almost every sector of our economy. Presiding Officer, this programme for government has been published earlier than usual, in part because it allows a clear year of delivery on the NHS and other public services, delivery in those areas that matter in the day-to-day lives of our citizens. But it has also been published now because of the scale of the looming economic challenge that we face. For the sake of Scottish jobs, for the sake of protecting people's quality of life, we are taking new steps, accelerating action to ensure Scotland's economy is better placed to ride the economic storms. Members will see the detailed and extensive section on the economy in the Programme for Government document, with action on planning reform, skills, housing investment, support for our rural economy, including our vital food and drink sector, promotion of Scotland the brand and more. But I want to highlight three particular initiatives designed to respond directly and specifically to the challenges we now face. First, working with Scottish Development International across their 34 international offices, we will deliver a new 6-point export plan to enable Scottish exporters to diversify and to grow markets. This includes more support for SMEs to participate in trade missions in both established and emerging markets, additional grant funding to help companies unlock specific targeted international growth, and bespoke support in key sectors, technology, life sciences, renewables and hydrogen, to maximise international opportunities. Second, to enable emerging Scottish companies to grow, we will create a new proof of concept fund with a focus on supporting the commercialisation of research projects with significant economic potential. We will deliver an improved ecosystem fund to further enhance Scotland's already effective start-up environment, including action to transform the number of women who start and scale up businesses. We must not forget, even amongst the gathering clouds, that Scotland is an innovative nation and that opportunities exist which can deliver real and significant benefits now and in the future. This government will prepare for the challenges, but we also seek to position Scotland to make the most of the many and significant economic opportunities that still exist. Third, we will deepen our commitment to a just transition and an industrial future for Scotland. As members will be aware, the Deputy First Minister is actively engaging with potential investors to ensure a green industrial future for the Grangemouth site. A key element in the success of this work is the development of carbon capture in Scotland, which is why it is now vital that the UK Government provides support not only to carbon capture projects in England, but also to the Acorn project in Scotland's north east. The Scottish Government has previously committed up to £80 million to make this happen if the UK Government, in turn, made the commitments necessary for the project to progress. Given the importance of this project for the Scottish economy, given its place at the very heart of the green industrialisation that is my ambition, and I trust the ambition of all parties in this chamber, my government is now willing, as part of a wider package of investment in industrial transformation, to remove that cap and increase the amount of Scottish funding that is available to make Acorn a reality should the project be given the go-ahead by the United Kingdom Government. I know many in this chamber share my concern that Scotland is little more than an afterthought to a UK Government that is willing to invest in a supercomputer in the south east of England weeks after cancelling the supercomputer for Edinburgh. A UK Government that moved heaven and earth to save Scunthorpe, but will not do the same for Grangemouth. Perhaps with swift action from the UK Government to support Acorn, which in turn will help us to deliver the future that Grangemouth deserves, the Prime Minister will do the right thing by Grangemouth.
Thank you.
Presiding Officer, working to deliver a stronger NHS, giving the people of Scotland the best cost of living support of any part of the United Kingdom, and action to protect Scotland's economy and maximise our economic potential in the face of global challenges, this is a government with what is best for Scotland at its heart. Since becoming First Minister last year, I have sought to focus government efforts on 4 central priorities. We seek a wealthier Scotland, higher standards of living for the people of Scotland, with action to grow Scotland's economy. A fairer Scotland, with Scotland's growing wealth shared more fairly so that we can remove the scourge of child poverty in our land. A greener Scotland, with action to maximise the benefits felt by the people of Scotland from our renewable energy wealth, benefits in terms of lower bills and well-paid jobs, and action to reduce emissions and protect and restore our stunning natural environment. And we seek public services that meet and indeed exceed the expectations of the people of Scotland. Have no doubt, many already do. But where action is needed to reform and renew, this government will take it. Progress for Scotland underpins each of our priorities and is at the heart of everything we will do. I want a Scotland that we can be proud of, a Scotland that is the best it can possibly be. That ambition is what gets me up every single morning. And at the very heart of that is the eradication of child poverty. Last year, when I presented my programme for government, I referred to the eradication of child poverty as the moral compass of my government. It remains so. It will until there is no single child left in poverty in Scotland. It is also, I said, the greatest investment in our country's future that we can possibly make. And in these times of cost of living pressures, that investment becomes ever more important, for these things disproportionately hurt our society's poorest. That is why, over the course of this Parliament, we increased the Scottish Child Payment from the original proposal that was put to us of a £5 payment to £27.15 and created a broader package of family payments which can be worth roughly £25,000 by age 16. Our policies are making a difference. On average, the lowest income households with children are estimated to be £2,600 a year better off this year as a result of Scottish Government policies. By 2029-30, it's expected to grow to an average of £3,700. The proportion of children living in relative poverty has reached its lowest level since 2014-15, and Scotland is making deeper, quicker progress here than in the rest of the United Kingdom. And while the Joseph Rowntree Foundation predicts child poverty will rise in other parts of the United Kingdom by 2029, policies such as our Scottish Child Payment and our commitment to end the cruel two-child limit are, and I quote, behind Scotland bucking the trend. But if we want to truly eradicate child poverty in Scotland, we must go further, and I recognise that. We are taking the steps to lift the two-child limit and remain on track to deliver this measure to lift more children out of poverty next April. It is also about making sure that public services are more joined up in their response, more family and person-centred, so that vulnerable families receive the focused help they need rather than simply the help that is available. And in the coming year, we will consult on, develop and publish a Tackling Child Poverty Delivery Plan for 2026 to 31, outlining the actions we will take with our partners for low-income families across Scotland to keep us on the journey to meet our poverty reduction targets for 2030. I can assure members that this will focus on reducing household costs, boosting incomes through social security and helping more people into fair and sustainable jobs, all of which play a central part in tackling not only the symptoms but the root causes of poverty in our society. Presiding Officer, there is always much more that we are doing that can be mentioned in a short parliamentary statement. I would encourage members and their constituents to read the programme for government with care. They will see our ongoing commitment to achieving net zero by 2045, action to maximise the environmental and economic benefits from our vast renewable energy wealth, steps to decarbonise heating and further decarbonise our transport network. To give just one example, I am proud that we have achieved our target of installing 6,000 public charge points for electric vehicles 2 years ahead of schedule, but more is needed, which is why in the year ahead we will introduce a new rural and island EV infrastructure grant supporting our commitment to approximately 24,000 additional public electric vehicle charge points by 2030. The public will notice in our programme for government the priority we are giving to the ABCs of education, with action in partnership with local government, parents, carers, pupils and schools to raise attainment and address problems of attendance, to tackle head-on behavioural challenges in our classrooms and reform the curriculum so that young Scots are equipped fully to meet the challenges and seize the opportunities of this new age. There is action to help regenerate our town centres, investment in thousands of new homes, record funding for the culture sector, new protections for renters, expansion of dental provision, a focus on additional support needs in our schools and much, much more. Presiding Officer, this is a programme for government, but also a programme for a better Scotland, a programme for a stronger NHS, for a more resilient Scotland, for a wealthier Scotland, centred on delivery, providing hope. It is a programme that seeks what's best for Scotland, a programme for government that gets our nation on track for success.
Thank you. The First Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around 40 minutes for questions, after which we'll move on to the next item of business, and I'd be grateful if members who wish to put a question were to press their request to speak buttons now. And I call on Russell Finlay.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today's flimsy programme for government is just more of the same from the SNP, and it will do little to restore public trust. No wonder that around 1 in 3 of their own MSPs couldn't even be bothered to turn up to listen to this. And that's because John Swinney is the politician who's failed to deliver for the past 18 years, the politician who's wasted more public money than anyone else, the politician who is now desperately trying to clear up his own mess. John Swinney can't possibly be the solution, because John Swinney has caused the problems. My party has long campaigned for greater spending on GPs who are on the front line of the NHS. John Swinney has today promised to increase GP numbers, but this same promise was made by the SNP 8 years ago, and it has not been kept. Does John Swinney think anyone out there will actually believe him this time? My party has also been the lone voice of opposition to repeated SNP income tax rises. Hard-working Scots pay £1.7 billion more than they would under tax bans for the rest of the UK. John Swinney today commits to stop turning the screw on Scottish taxpayers, but he's previously broken a similar promise promise not to raise taxes. So why did John Swinney not take this opportunity to reduce the painful tax burden that he has inflicted? People desperately want to see politicians focus on the key issues that impact their lives. Yet John Swinney says he's going to use even more taxpayers' money to try and find an economic case for independence. Well, he's not going to find one, because there isn't one. This is more of the same from the same old John Swinney, a politician who's completely obsessed by a lifelong pursuit of breaking up the United Kingdom. Does John Swinney really think it's right to waste time, energy and public money on this divisive nonsense when so many other issues need our urgent attention?
First Minister.
I see my appeal for common ground to be constructed in the Parliament has not exactly made much headway with Russell Finlay this afternoon, but it will not stop me continuing to try to find some common ground to make progress, Presiding Officer. On the question of GP services, the Government, as I indicated in my statement, will be allocating a greater proportion of new NHS funding to the primary care sector, which will benefit GPs and will result in the expansion of about 100,000 appointments within the GP sector on key conditions. On the question of income tax, I remind Parliament of the comment I made in my statement that the majority of workers in Scotland pay comparatively less tax and income tax than would be the case south of the border. They also pay lower council tax and water bills than is the case south of the border. And of course, if they send their children to universities in Scotland, they don't pay tuition fees either, which is a very formidable saving for families the length of bread to the country, beyond the fact that, of course, if they have young children, they'll get access to early learning and childcare, which I presided over the expansion of as Education Secretary, which gives a benefit to families the length and breadth of the country. So all of those issues are relevant to the question about income tax. But the other point that's crucial about income tax is that Mr Finlay persists in coming to Parliament and telling us that he wants to reduce income tax, but he won't tell us about the cuts in public spending and public services that he will make to pay for it. And that's just one of the big flaws in the arguments that Mr Finlay puts forward, a £1 billion flaw in the argument. Now, lastly, Presiding Officer, Mr Finlay has raised my support for Scottish independence, which is, of course, a lifetime commitment that I have given to the question of independence. And one of the reasons why I want Scotland to be independent is I want Scotland to be a country that can enjoy a higher standard of living than is current within the United Kingdom. Why do I say that is more relevant today? Because of the Brexit that was championed by the Conservative Party, standards. Well, all of the evidence demonstrates my case that Brexit has resulted in a decline in the standard of living of people in this country. Brexit has resulted in a decline in the standard of living of people in this country. And the way for Scotland to overcome the damage of Brexit is to rejoin the European Union, and that's by being an independent country.
Anna Sarwar.
Presiding Officer, is that it? After 18 years in power, and what could be John Swinney's last year in government, is that the best
Thank you.
he can
Let's
do?
hear one another.
It's embarrassing. Nicola Sturgeon's probably messaging to say it's awful right now. Although it's interesting to see that she turned up to do a press hurdle outside but didn't bother coming in for John Swinney's programme for government. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some things in here that I agree with, especially the bits that he's nicked from Scottish Labour. It's not exactly the borrowing powers that I thought the SNP had in mind. But, Presiding Officer, this statement fails to meet the challenges or ambitions of the people of Scotland. No recognition of the scale of the crisis in the NHS delivered by the SNP, with 1 in 6 Scots on a waiting list. Where is the plan to fix it? No recognition of the fact that our schools are falling down the league tables delivered by the SNP. No plan to fix it. No recognition of the fact that 10,000 children in Scotland are homeless, delivered by the SNP. Where is the plan to fix it? And no recognition of the billions of pounds of public money wasted, delivered by the SNP. Where is the plan to fix it? And the truth is, they have no plan, because after nearly 2 decades in government, if the SNP had a good idea, they would have delivered it by now. Instead, all we are left with is sticking plasters to cover and distract from the damage that the SNP have caused. It's an SNP government running down the clock. Next year, Scots will face a choice: a third decade with the SNP, or a new direction and new leadership for Scotland.
Let's hear Mr Sarwar.
They don't want to hear it, Presiding Officer, but John Swinney has been at the heart of government for nearly 2 decades. So how can the man who broke it now be the one to pretend he can fix it?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, on the various issues that Mr Sarwar raised, let me just say that, of course, on the health service, we've seen increases in inpatient and day case activity over the 12 months to December 2024. And I cited in my statement the various improvements that have been made in the performance of the National Health Service based on the new funding that the Government has made available. And, of course, that funding is more significant in this coming financial year. And what we are doing, of course, is helping the National Health Service to recover from the impact of the COVID pandemic and the delays in treatment. And Mr Sarwar managed to breeze his way through that whole question without mentioning the impact of the global pandemic and its disruption to our healthcare services. On the question of schools, of course, we are seeing the levels of literacy and numeracy that have been recorded in our schools at much higher levels, and the attainment gap being at its narrowest in a number of the key aspects of literacy and numeracy assessment that are made. And on housing in Scotland, we have delivered more affordable housing per head of population by a significant margin compared to the developments in England, and very significantly compared to the situation in Wales. And of course, when I come to the question of Wales, I'm interested that today my counterpart in Wales, Eluned Morgan, the First Minister of Wales, has been setting out her vigorous disagreement with the direction of the United Kingdom government, the United Kingdom Labour government that's been elected, the last time people were faced with a choice of government. And of course, we've heard none of that from Mr Sarwar, because he has been right behind the UK government and its welfare cuts to some of the poorest in our country, right behind the UK government on no action on the WASPy women, right behind the UK government on the cuts to welfare, to winter fuel payments for pensioners in our country. So I think the people of Scotland will be able to look at the contrast between an SNP government that's delivering for the people of Scotland and a Labour government in the United Kingdom that's selling out the poor and the disadvantaged in our country and penalising pensioners. I think they'll choose the SNP.
Before we move to Lorna Slater, I would just say we're now at 10 minutes and we've only taken 2 members, so while brief questions would be appreciated, more concise responses too. I call Lorna Slater.
I'm delighted that the Government has finally committed to the Scottish Green policy of ending peak rail fares for good. Earlier this year, they said they wouldn't do it. They even voted against Green calls to do it, but we finally got there. More brave decisions are needed to make all public transport cheaper. The Scottish Government agreed to Green proposals for a £2 bus fare cap as a local pilot from January 2026. But people all across Scotland need cheaper buses now. Will the First Minister avoid the hesitation he showed over peak rail fares and get on with delivering another great Green idea, capping the price of bus fares all over Scotland for good?
First Minister.
I welcome the encouragement that I'm getting from Lorna Slater about the peak rail fares issue. The Government faced difficult financial choices at the time when we address this issue. We've got public finances into a stronger position, so we're able to afford that policy, and we'll be delighted to take it forward. And of course, it will make a big difference for travellers around the country. On the question of cheaper buses, the Transport Secretary is taking forward the pilot work that we agreed in the budget. We will, of course, look at its results with interest, and the financial support for under 22 and concessionary over 60s travel, and for disabled people as well, is a significant contribution to supporting bus travel in Scotland.
Well, it's Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Presiding Officer, the First Minister had barely drawn breath before referencing his ambition to create a vibrant economy. In this world of war and of tariffs, there is a heightened urgency and a heightened challenge to that ambition. He referenced, rightly, the key levers critical to fostering growth. Those are planning reform, skills development, housing and rural development. He isn't wrong, but his record on all of these should give us all pause. Does the First Minister accept that for nearly 20 years, his government has presided over a planning system which takes years to approve projects which in other parts of Europe would be green-lighted in weeks, that we aren't building enough affordable houses, which in turn makes it harder for us to recruit particularly key workers to remote and rural areas, and that thanks to his government's erosion of further education, we are in no position to generate the skills base we need to compete in the industries of the future like defence, renewables and AI.
First Minister.
President Officer, on the various questions, in terms of economic performance, GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3% since 2007, when this government came to office, compared to 6.1% in the United Kingdom. So that's a demonstration that the government's policies have supported and encouraged growth in the economy, and we obviously want to do more. On planning, Ivan McKee, the Planning Minister, has been taking forward a programme of planning reform to make sure that we are able to support developments where they are appropriate to do so. But I would counsel Mr Cole Hamilton, because in the same breath he will also press us to make sure that we're applying stringent environmental standards to protect the natural environment. So we can't have it both ways on many of these questions. And then lastly, on the question of housing, as I indicated to Mr Sarwar, the Scottish Government has a record of building more affordable houses per head of population than any other part of the United Kingdom, while we've been dealing with the 14 years of austerity that were started under the Conservative government, or the Conservative and Liberal government in 2010. So the fact that we prioritised housing to build more affordable houses per head of population than in any other part of the United Kingdom is an indication of the commitment of the government. I'm delighted that Mr Cole Hamilton and his colleagues were able to support us in our £768 million investment in the budget in affordable housing.
Michelle Thompson, to be followed by Craig Hoy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Now, I welcome the commitment to an industrial future for Grangemouth in my constituency, and of course for the £25 million pledged thus far. Carbon capture and storage is an important part of this industrial strategy, so I'm also therefore pleased that the Scottish Government is willing to increase the current commitment of £80 million for Acorn if it means the UK Government will approve this project. So will the First Minister join me in continuing to call for this essential project to be given the green light at pace, and ideally in the forthcoming UK Government spending review?
First Minister.
Be enormously beneficial if we were to get the green light, and it's not actually beneficial, it's essential that we get the green light. Forgive me, the word essential is the word I have to use to Michelle Thompson, that we get the green light for the Acorn project. There's a superb opportunity available for Scotland. The UK Government has supported 2 carbon capture projects in England. There is an undeniable case for the Acorn project, and the Scottish Government is willing to be a more significant funder if that project gets the go-ahead, and I encourage the Prime Minister and the United Kingdom to do so.
Craig Hoy, to be followed by Karen Adam.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. SNP MSPs have been nodding slavishly behind the First Minister, but beyond the Holyrood bubble, people and businesses will be scratching their heads in disbelief at today's programme for government. This government has failed to deliver growth, imposed the highest taxes in the UK and has run down public services, while failing on its own child poverty and net zero targets. And I agree with Nicola Sturgeon that the SNP's previous attempts to get the NHS off its knees were awful, but her scathing criticism surely applies to today's blueprint as well. So I ask John Swinney this: hasn't it come to something when the principal call for business is for John Swinney to do no more harm? And despite his plans, saying his plans will boost exports and attract investment, won't business see through his flimsy rhetoric of an innovation nation and see instead a high-tax, low-growth Scotland burdened by years of SNP over-regulation and narrow-minded nationalist dogma?
First Minister.
OK, let's take some of that apart. The growth record. So GDP per person in Scotland has grown by 10.3% since this government came to office, compared to 6.1% in the United Kingdom. So that demonstrates that we have been able to preside over a stronger economic performance in Scotland. Now, if that wasn't enough for Mr Hoy, we could bring things right close up to home. In 2024, Scotland's economy grew by 1.2%. Now, Mr Hoy might not think that's enough, but it was more than it was in the United Kingdom. When his, and I remind Mr Hoy, 2024 started when we had the completely useless and incompetent Conservative government in office, and they were delivering lower growth than we are delivering in Scotland. So I think Mr Hoy is going to have to change the script, because this government is delivering for the people of Scotland on the economy, on jobs, on investment, on securing new economic opportunities, and we're going to build on that record in the years to come.
Karen Adam, to be followed by Michael Mara.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I welcome the expansion of specialist regional centres to deliver 150,000 additional appointments and procedures to reduce waiting times and waiting lists, and 100,000 extra appointments in GP surgeries focused on addressing the root causes of ill health. So can I ask the First Minister how the programme for government will build on the recent progress we've seen and ensure more people can see their GP and get the care that they need in their community?
First Minister.
Two specific measures will help in that respect. One is the expansion of the Pharmacy First services, which will provide ever more access to healthcare interventions for members of the public. And secondly, the additional capacity that's being created within GP services to make sure there are a range of appointments available to deal with core health conditions. And those two measures together will help to address many of the challenges that we face in accessing local healthcare services, which I recognise to be of vital importance to everyone in Scotland.
Michael Mara, to be followed by Emma Roddick.
We'll of course have to wait and see if anything actually happens, but it is welcome that after just the 18 years in charge of our NHS, John Swinney turned up in Dundee yesterday to say that the SNP now agreed with Labour policy that the ATM GP rush has to end. But who caused the problem in the first place? Could it be the SNP government that cut the number of GP surgeries by 25%? Could it be the SNP government that increased GP patient lists by 37%? If the SNP had a plan to save Scotland's NHS from their own incompetence, we would have seen it by now. Why should anyone believe that the people who broke our NHS can be the people to fix it?
First Minister.
For the very simple reason that the ministers in the Scottish Government today are addressing the issues of concern to the public, strengthening the NHS in the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, and making sure that we've got the capacity in place to meet the needs of the public of Scotland. That's exactly what we've done in addressing the concerns of the public in Scotland and making sure there is more capacity and more opportunity for people to access healthcare services in Scotland. That's what the SNP government has delivered.
Emma Roddick, to be followed by Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The last few weeks have been extremely challenging for the LGBTQ+ community. The tally of bad news continued with the lack of an ending conversion practices bill. Can the First Minister set out plans in this programme for government to advance the rights of LGBTQ+ people and reassure the community that his government will do everything in its power to protect our rights?
First Minister.
President, I happily give that commitment to Emma Roddick, and I know that the last few weeks have been particularly challenging for members of the LGBTQ+ community. So I recognise that, and I want to assure Emma Roddick of the commitment of the government to address the concerns that have been expressed. I've set out in my statement the rationale for the steps that we're taking on ending conversion practices by collaborating with the UK Government, who has indicated they intend to take forward this agenda, and by making sure that we provide funding support to organisations that will work to promote equality within Scotland in the forthcoming financial year. And I give her the assurance that those commitments will lie at the heart of the programme for government.
Kerr, to be followed by George Adam.
The First Minister has recommitted this government to a just transition and an industrial future for Scotland. What impact will last year's £23.4 million cut to the net zero and energy budget have on achieving that?
First Minister.
Well, as Mr Kerr will be familiar, the Government has to live within the resources that are available to it, and we've had to deal with a significant pressure in the last 2 financial years of hyperinflation arising out of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. That has fuelled public sector pay deals to levels that were not conceived of when we were setting the government's budget. So there have been changes that we've had to make. What the government has done, of course, is put forward a budget which has now been supported by Parliament, not by Mr Kerr or the Conservatives, so I don't know quite why he's complaining about anything financially to me, because he wasn't willing to press the button to vote for the government's budget. He was just prepared. He's just prepared to sit over there, complain, not suggest any alternatives, and fail to support the delivery of finances to support our public services. That is a capitulation of responsibilities by a Member of Parliament.
George Adam, to be followed by Pam Duncan-Glancy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Removing peak rail fares for September will greatly benefit my constituents in Paisley, considering we have one of the busiest train stations in Scotland. But since cost is a major barrier to shifting from car use to public transport, what steps has the First Minister outlined in his programme for government to help more people travel sustainably by bus or train? First Minister.
President Officer, the steps that we are putting in place around peak rail fares, alongside the support to the bus sector, the support also to the active travel work that is underway within government, are 3 of the measures that I would cite to Mr Adam as being measures which have been taken to support the modal shift that is required to support our climate ambitions.
Pam Duncan-Glancy, to be followed by Fergus Ewing.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I thank the First Minister for advance sight of the statement. The First Minister talks of the ABCs of education, so let me test his government's record on them. On attainment, more pupils than ever are leaving school with no qualifications, and the attainment gap in a variety of measures is growing. On absence, rates are up, and the government announces today that it will monitor the data. When families needed action, they got simply observation. On behaviour, violence is up and misogynistic abuse is growing, but instead of addressing staff workload or pupil needs, the government talks about a new action plan which hasn't even defined the problem yet. And on curriculum, after years of reviews, consultations and rebrands, subject choice is narrowing, vocational routes are under-resourced and reform has been delayed and diluted again. So can the First Minister tell us this? After 17 years of broken promises and a generation of young people's opportunities squandered in the process, will he now admit his government has failed on education?
First Minister.
No, I won't. Subject choice is very extensive in Scottish education, and I think Pam Duncan-Glancy does a disservice to the education system to suggest otherwise. On attainment, well,
Thank you, members. Let's hear one another.
It's factually accurate, Mr Maher, believe you me. On primary pupils' attainment, the gap in literacy in primary pupils, P1, 4 and 7 combined, is now its lowest level ever, at 20.2 percentage points, the lowest level ever. That debunks what Pam Duncan-Glancy is saying to me. When it comes to the behaviour interventions, the government is taking steps which have been consulted upon in Parliament to support the teaching profession in tackling unacceptable behaviour in our schools, and there are further steps been taken to support to address the absence issue from schools, which I recognise and the government accepts is unacceptable at the levels that it is currently at, because that deprives young people of their engagement in learning. And the Education Secretary is bringing forward measures to ensure that the attendance issue is addressed by the communication and the engagement that we have with the school communities in this respect. So I can assure Pam Duncan-Glancy that the Government is taking forward every step we can to strengthen attendance and participation in education.
Fergus Ewing, to be followed by Jackie Dunbar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The recent blackouts in Spain and Portugal caused havoc to the vast majority of all the people in those countries, and the initial estimate of the cost of putting it right is around €4,000 million. They rely heavily, as we do, on renewables. The First Minister has ruled out nuclear. There is no coal. That just leaves gas. Does the First Minister accept that to provide stability for the national grid, it is necessary to provide baseload or backup, and the only option remaining on the table, First Minister, is gas? Will you support the new gas stations, which are tremendously cleaner and more efficient than the old ones, and which can help protect us against the risk of blackout in Scotland and the UK?
Always through the Chair, please. First Minister.
President, Mr Ewing raises an important point about the need for energy security and the need for baseload capacity. So I don't doubt the premise of the question that he puts to me. The issues can be addressed, however, in different ways. We can take forward steps in relation to long-duration energy storage technologies. We can take forward work in relation to pumped hydro storage. We can take forward steps in relation to battery storage as part of the renewables energy mix. What I would say to Mr Ewing, he asked me specifically about gas power stations. He will know there is a live planning application with ministers, so I will avoid commenting on that question. But I do think there's a wider solution to the issue, the important issue that Mr Ewing puts to me, which has to be addressed to deliver security and safety for the population in Scotland.
Jackie Dunbar, to be followed by Sue Webber.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to see the SNP Government continuing to focus on supporting folk with everyday costs through the cost of living package, through what continues to be a cost of living crisis for so many. Has the Government carried out any assessment of what the average household benefits from policies such as lower council tax and water bills than England and Wales have, along with other supports such as free tuition fees, childcare, bus travel, to name just a few?
First Minister.
In relation to some of the specific points that Jackie Dunbar raises with me, average council tax charges for Band E properties are £600 lower in Scotland compared to England and £400 lower than in Wales. In addition to that, our provisions on early learning and childcare would essentially represent a benefit of about £6,000 per child per year. And in relation to tuition fees, students in England pay £28,605 for tuition fees, when Scottish domiciled students have continued free university tuition. So I think those are some of the answers that Jackie Dunbar was looking for.
Sue Webber, to be followed by Audrey Nicholl.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the programme for government outlines no timeline or plan to dual the A96, offers supposed milestones on dualling the A9, considering it was supposed to be finished this year, and contains no mention at all of other vital roads like the A75 or the A77. Does the First Minister accept that communities have been left in the dark over long-promised SNP upgrades to these vital roads? And can the First Minister guarantee that these upgrades will finally or even be delivered?
First Minister.
On the position in relation to the A9, for example, the programme for government reaffirms the timetable that's been shared with Parliament already, so there's no deviation from that timetable. Indeed, the Transport Secretary last week was up at the stretch of the A9 at Moy to Tomatin to see the start of the works there, and there will be further steps taken as in line with the timetable that has been shared with Parliament by the Transport Secretary for new sections to be put out to tender. Indeed, there's already a tendering exercise out on one of the other sections on the A9. In relation to the position on the A96, we remain absolutely committed to dualling the Inverness to Nairn section, including the Nairn bypass, and made orders were published on the 12th of March 2024 to deliver that particular road. So that progress is underway, and we will continue to keep Parliament informed of developments.
Audrey Nicholl, to be followed by Mark Griffin.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister expand more about the 6-point export plan, which specific international markets will be targeted and through which export sectors, and how this package of measures will support Scottish companies to reach global markets at a time of particular economic uncertainty due to US tariffs?
Minister.
President Officer, Audrey Nicholl highlights an important issue around economic volatility, and part of what the Government is trying to do in the programme for government is to make it clear where we can take steps to support companies in navigating those examples of global volatility. We have a number of key markets which are represented by the areas where we have an international presence through Scottish Development International. We also have the benefit of the Global Scot network, which helps us to establish connections. And in terms of sectors, technology, life sciences, renewables and green hydrogen, premium food and drink and advanced manufacturing are all some of the key sectors that the Government will pursue.
Mark Griffin, to be followed by Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A year on from declaring a housing emergency, we still don't have enough homes. Building rates have fallen and over 10,000 children are homeless. The Government have failed to get us anywhere near the delivery of 110,000 affordable homes, and the 8,000 re-announced in the programme for government won't be enough to get that target back on track, which isn't a surprise given that the huge housing budget cut was only partially restored this year. But can I ask the First Minister, in line with pleas made by Shelter and Homes for Scotland, to pledge to build the homes we all need, or will the 110,000 affordable homes target become another broken promise?
First Minister.
I have to correct Mr Griffin, who's normally very accurate about this information, but the housing budget this year has more than compensated for the it's higher than it was in the previous year to the year in which we had to reduce the budget. So it's so that's what the Government is doing. We've remedied that particular issue. So I would just encourage the Labour Party to accept the facts and move on and find something else to talk about, find something else to moan about, given that we have addressed the issue about the budget that we've put in place. And the second
Let's hear one another.
And the second point I'd make to Mr Griffin, and I made this point to him at First Minister's questions last week, and I'm surprised he hasn't taken account of this. In Scotland, we have delivered more affordable houses per head of population than in England or in Wales in the face of austerity, and the Government's programme will build on exactly that.
Kenneth Gibson, to be followed by Miles Briggs.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Scotland's prosperity depends on having a highly skilled workforce, enabling a globally competitive economy in sectors such as aerospace and life sciences. And providing more science, technology, engineering and maths skills was an issue raised by Colleges Scotland at the Finance and Public Administration Committee only this morning. Can the First Minister advise as to what steps his government is taking to deliver the unfilled demand for 15,000 apprenticeship places that Open University says Scottish employers currently require?
First Minister.
President, so we are investing about £185 million each year, enabling 25,000 people in each year to undertake modern apprenticeships. We will continue to support around 38,500 apprentices already in training as part of our wider programme. The issue that Mr Gibson raises touches on the availability of an adequately sized working age population in Scotland. And that is a strategic challenge for Scotland, which is made worse because of the effect of the loss of free movement of individuals as a consequence of Brexit. So there are steps that could help us to strengthen the employment base of Scotland if we had a larger working age population who would be able to benefit from the training opportunities we can provide.
Miles Briggs, to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. In the education section of the programme for government, it states SNP ministers will be ensuring the removal of written exams in more practical subjects. So can I ask the First Minister two questions? How do ministers plan to deliver this change this year? And does this move away from our traditional rigorous Scottish exam system now present SNP exam policy? And does he accept the concerns this could further weaken our education system and confuse employers?
First Minister.
I think if Mr Briggs is saying that the only way that the performance of a student can be assessed is by a written examination, then I think that's what I take from Mr. Briggs.
Let's hear the First Minister.
That's what I take from Mr Briggs's question, that he is. The emphasis in the programme for government about alternative methods of assessment are very common in our college and university community already, and they contribute significantly to the international reputation of Scotland. So there has to be high standards in our examination system. I don't think that only can be delivered by high-stakes exams. I think, in fact, some of the best assessment of performance can be made during an academic year. That's what happens in many of our universities and colleges, and I think the Education Secretary is making a sensible step of applying more of that in our school community.
Stuart McMillan, to be followed by John Mason.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I am pleased the programme for government will include the non-surgical cosmetic bill, making the aesthetic sector safer for patients and practitioners, and, as the First Minister will aware, something that one of my constituents has lobbied for quite some time. But can the First Minister indicate when he plans to introduce the bill into the Scottish Parliament?
First Minister.
President, we will be introducing that in the remainder of the parliamentary session, with the objective of ensuring that legislation is complete by the end of this Parliament. I commend Mr McMillan on the way in which he has pursued this issue, and I'm glad that we've found the legislative vehicle that will enable us to take that forward.
John Mason, to be followed by Rona Mackay.
Thank you. The First Minister said in his statement, "A fairer Scotland with Scotland's growing wealth shared more fairly." Can I ask, is he thinking of a more progressive council tax or property tax, or perhaps a wealth tax?
First Minister.
We've got to. The point in principle is being applied in the government's approach to taxation. It's always underpinned our approach to taxation. And what I want to make sure is that we continue to take forward measures that support those who suffer from poverty, suffer in poverty, that we can assist them out of poverty, that we can create the opportunities for them to thrive. But of course we need well-financed public services to enable us to do so.
Rona Mackay, to be followed by Willie Rennie.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. My constituents in Strathkelvin and Bearsden benefit every day from the current cost of living guarantee of the SNP government that supports them and their families, support not available anywhere else in the UK. What plans are in the programme for government that will particularly provide further help for families and children?
First Minister.
President, we took steps in the budget to make provision for us to expand a number of areas that will be relevant here. The Bright Start Breakfast Fund is one example of that. The expansion of free school meals to around 25,000 more pupils in low-income households will be another. And of course, the steps that we are taking forward to address the issue, well, the requirement to lift the two-child limit, will help to address some of the points that Rona Mackay has raised with me.
And Willie Rennie.
It is striking. It's the last signature government statement before the election next year, and the gallery is almost empty. But can I just say that whilst the share of health spending on GPs is down, weights are up. So why did it take the threat of a formal dispute from the doctors for the government to finally act?
Well,
First Minister.
I assure Mr Rennie that it didn't, because if Mr Rennie casts his mind back, the government has been engaged in dialogue with the GP community on these questions for some time. Indeed, I reflected in January in my speech at the Robotarium on exactly these issues that we were addressing, to make sure that we could improve access to healthcare, to GP services, and the government has delivered that as part of the programme for government today.
Thank you. That concludes the First Minister's statement. There will be a brief pause before we move on to the next item of business and to allow front benches to reorganise.